That's better.
Yeah, no, I was saying because we have an international audience, and so we always like to say where you were born and raised.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Vineland, New Jersey, and
Okay.
that's the south part of Jersey. Of course, here in America. And all my life, pretty much, I was raised there, and then traveled and moved to Delaware once I had met my husband.
Okay. We've interviewed a lot of people who are out from New Jersey, the boys from Riff, Nitty, Mahafa Blackstreet, Bub, Naughty by Nature. So it's amazing how New Jersey and the music scene seems to have raised a lot of people with talent. And Regina Bell, growing up, did you know any of them?
Growing up, no. And I think that may be more so because, like I said, with me growing up in South Jersey and with most of those being either central or north, that's
Yeah.
probably why I really didn't, grow up with them. And trust me, when I tell you where I'm from is really country.
Okay.
So it was like, whoa, someone at that time, like someone that made it from like the Boondocks. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
So no, I didn't meet anybody until I actually got in the industry, didn't know anybody before that.
Okay. Well, then growing up in your area, how did how did you start singing growing up there?
Okay, well, I'm from and I thank God for this, I'm from a musically inclined family. So
Okay.
my mother and my father both, rest in peace. They were brought up in the church and they sang. And there were 8 of us, with me being the baby. And so because, like I said, with them being brought up in church, they brought us up in church. Let me take my glasses off. They brought church as well. So it started with the choir, singing on the church choir. And then from the church choir, as I started going to school, I started singing in school choirs. But what's crazy is I wasn't really that solo artist. It wasn't until like my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, had kind of heard something in my voice, when I would sing on the gospel choir at church. And so she just kind of convinced me, let's just try like some solos, because I have other siblings that sing as well. Like there's really one sister of mine that, whew, I tell people, if you think I can sing, you need to hear her sing, and she's more gospel. But
Okay.
nevertheless, so I started singing solo, and then from there, the pastor and I just started getting, requests to sing, and then even on the school side, when I was in those choirs, the same thing pretty much happened. People started hearing about me, and so our choir director at school was like, "Can you, sing a couple of solos?" So I was a little bit on the shy side, and then I just started branching out more. And I also was into a lot of sports, so basketball and cheerleading. I'm sorry. I played basketball, but I really loved cheerleading. So
Oh,
I cheered for basketball and football, and a couple of times I was asked to sing the national anthem.
okay.
And so before you know it, it just started. I guess word started getting out. So shortly after graduation, just kind of fast forwarding a little bit, shortly after graduation, my brother, with my one brother that's still living, his name is Chris. He was the one that was like, we need to get you in a studio. I want to just hear how you sound in a studio. So he had a friend. We lived in Millville, New Jersey at that time. So we had a friend that my brother knew, because my brother rapped along with a cousin of ours. So they
Okay.
put me in the studio, and I just kind of sang Tracy Spencer's song. I think one was Shanice. Then my brother started kind of like just letting people hear it,
Wow.
fast forwarding a little bit more. Then my cousin and a brother-in-law of mine that are also musically inclined knew of Rodney Jerkins. So
Oh,
that's where Jerkins and I kind of connected. And then I went to let Rodney hear me sing at his home in Pomona, New Jersey. He wanted to sign me right on the spot. So
wow.
that's how that's my whole, pretty much my life, from I'm leading from the beginning to how I got in the music industry.
Okay. Well, I want to go back a little bit because growing up then at that probably while in high school, who were you listening to, and who were you inspired by musically?
Oh man. Again, because the family was so like religious, there was a lot of church music.
Okay.
My mother was a fan. My mother was a fan of Shirley Caesar. Every now and again, believe it or not, my mom would listen to Patti LaBelle. You
Okay.
know, and I think it's because people had said she sounded a lot like Patti LaBelle. You know, just those vocals, she just could just, I mean, wail those vocals. But Vanessa Bell Armstrong was a big one. The Clark sisters.
Okay.
Uh, a lot of gospel artists. And then of course there was, some of the R&B that my parents would play, like the old school, Temptations. My mother, she absolutely loved the Temptations, especially their Silent Night. But the list can really go on. I want to say that I really, really was crazy about Vanessa Bell Armstrong.
Okay.
I just absolutely would just put her stuff on repeat and repeat and repeat, as I was growing up.
Yeah.
But that's, I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there's more because there was so many, and I like, pretty much multiple types of music, so yeah, that's pretty much it.
So when they, your brother was talking about, wow, you could sing and let's try and get you in the studio. Were you thinking, oh, I can become a recording artist? Or what were your thoughts about what you were going to do after high school?
Well, I didn't think, honestly, I knew that was a dream, but I really was like, I did not have my hopes up for it. There was no way. My parents also was big on education, so I was really good in school as well.
Yeah.
So my thing was I wanted to be a pediatrician.
Okay.
So yeah, so after high school, I was like, okay, yeah, music is definitely first, but kind of got caught up in a relationship with my oldest son's father. So what kind of happened was, the whole love thing comes along and it kind of just, pauses you a little bit. So what happened was I ended up going to a community college, and then I ended up getting pregnant with my oldest son. So it kind of was like, put that on pause for a little bit. Maybe I'll just go back and be a nurse.
Okay.
Because I also love the medical field. I love the medical field. So after that, I kind of still was, even with the whole working with the Rodney Jerkins, I kind of got in there too. So at that point, it was like, okay, I have my son, I'm with, Rodney Jerkins, maybe this thing will happen. And so one day I got a call that, hey, a couple labels were interested, and it kind of went from there. So the school thing was a pause.
Okay.
And then, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you, because at the time,
I kind of mixed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
sorry,
at the time you met with Rodney, who, because I'm trying to think about the year you met him. Who has he, any major work? I know he was a Teddy very briefly, but had he done anything significant before, by the time you met him?
Well, let's say this. I know he had been working with some artists. When you say significance,
so this is pre-Brandy, this is pre-Jennifer Lopez.
No, he hadn't worked with any of them. I know he was doing some writing for some other artists, but I believe that once he started, working with me and got his deal through Mercury, I think a lot more things started filtering for him. But I do know he was working with other artists, but they weren't like the Brandys or the Michael Jacksons.
Yeah.
They kind of like came along, kind of like after the mix. So to my knowledge, that's kind of what I knew, because he was so busy with my project, and I'm quite sure if there was someone else that he was working with prior to me that was, huge, I believe they would have shared that, with me, but to my knowledge, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know the work he's done subsequently, but what was your impression when you saw him at first, this young kid, musically?
Well, I had heard a great deal about him already through family members, through again, one at the time, my brother-in-law and my cousin Kenny. So I heard many great things about him. And then my sister had knew the one that I told you that also sings gospel.
Yeah.
She knew of the Jerkins and knew them as well, and they knew of her. So I had already heard some really good things about him. So I was super excited. And when I did finally get to meet him, it was everything that I thought, very talented young man, very respectful, very mannerable, very focused.
Mm.
And, and the work vibe was good. He's
Yeah.
definitely is a genius with his music. He definitely is. So yeah, Fred was in on the project as well. He too was a phenomenal producer, well as slash songwriter. And the both of them together, again, and I'm speaking of that time, worked well together. And I
Mm.
think, at the time I felt like we were hand in gloves. That's how I kind of felt like it was a pretty cohesive match there. They brought some things out of me. It was definitely a first experience for me to, record an album. And we hustled. We did so much. So it was great. I have to say, it was great. Their whole family is, sweet people.
Did you know how to do any writing? Because I know you were singing and it focused a lot on your vocals, but what about actually putting pen to paper and writing, helping with the
That,
songwriting?
so that was another thing that they actually brought out of me.
Oh,
Um, I really didn't. I really didn't write as much as I should have. Let's put it like that. As I look back at it now, but they did try to encourage me to write more. And I did write some. I will say on that first album, I probably co-wrote on, I think it was maybe two or three. One of them
okay.
I actually wrote pretty much the whole song, and that was Freak On. And again, this was the first album.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and then like I said, I co-wrote on a couple of other ones, one being one of the ones his brother had written. And so they tried and they did encourage, but I think what was happening was I was being molded and pulled in like different directions. And I can explain this now, and it probably was not the best. I probably couldn't explain it this way then, but
Yeah.
now I'm seeing that that was such a novice era for me, and I was just being pulled in so many directions. And as a novice writer as well, I just was like, let me just focus on this. So let me just focus on this, and let me just focus on this, meaning more so just the singing,
Yeah.
because I felt like I just had to deliver. And then an image, it was like that's what you hear, get in the gym and do this and do that, and luckily I was never a big person, but still, how that industry is.
Yeah.
Now, 3 kids later, you know, but nevertheless, like I said, I did do some writing, and definitely did far more on my second project, and
Yeah.
then anything and moving forward. But yeah, so they did try to encourage me. They did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So was your brother still supporting you around this time after they introduced you to, after you were working with management, teaching you about the business and things?
Honestly, and that's a touchy part of my life because I know that family wanted to. I know that they did. I know my brother, well, he had went on and, he had got married and was, focused on his family.
Okay.
My cousin and even my brother-in-law, they were focused on their family. I think what began to happen, and like I said, this is touchy, is that's where the separation started coming in, or the distance started coming in. And I started traveling, to so many different places.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of became where I was lured in, and Rodney's father became my manager. So Rodney's my producer, and now his dad's my manager. So it was kind of like people were kind of, you know, they were pushed out of the way, and there's no other way to say it. Pushed out of the way, and the Rev kind of like, took control of my career. Um, and the Rev did ask me if I wanted my mother to be a part of the management team, but my mom was feeling like, she just really didn't know much. And
Yeah.
again, having a big family, mother had other things to focus on as well. Of course, my family was supportive, prayed for me, loved me, and wanted the best for me. But I have a big family, and everybody, have their families.
Yeah.
So my mom was just like, no, she just kind of gave the Rev her blessing, like, just take care of my baby, you know, and it was kind of on that note. So again, my brother-in-law and my cousin, it just kind of was like they were there for that support, but they didn't hold me any longer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
The and I guess I think one of the things that surprised a lot of us as fans is the fact that when we're watching the music videos and an album goes platinum, we're like, wow, you guys are making loads of money and stuff, and then we learn about the business size and the contracts and all the royalties and the splits, and then it's like, wow. And the fact is, we learned that back in those days, you get a record deal and they're taking around the world. No one checks the bank account until later on. For you, what was it? What was it for you? I mean, as I said, they opened the doors, gave you an opportunity, but did they explain everything and made sure that you were taken care of?
Okay. Whew. Where do I begin? Okay, so yes, let me say this. I definitely agree with, you get these opportunities and you're pulled all over the place. And that money, you look in the bank account, you're like, "Oh, a penny." But, so nevertheless, with my experience, I too went through the whole, it's almost like everybody else makes the money but you. But I
Yeah.
will tell you this, when I got my advances from the record company, or advance, I will say that Reverend Jerkins really did say to me, try to hold on to that money as much as you can. He stressed paying taxes. He was really on point with things like that. He really was. So I did end up, investing or getting financial advisors. I'm not even going to put their name out of who I'm. Let me just say this. I did have financial advisors, but I don't think the advisement was what it should have been. And I'll leave it at that. I'm not dragging no company down, not doing anything. However, with that being said, although I want to say that, yes, I believe I should have had more money than I did get, a lot of it is my fault though, simply because the one thing that my mother and father always taught me as I was growing up in our family, you don't put your full trust in no man but God. You don't ever do that. You need to learn things for yourself. But as I mentioned earlier on, being that artist and just so much coming at me, I'm trying to focus on so many different things. I'm
Yeah.
putting my full trust in people. I'm
Yeah.
trusting my attorneys. I'm trusting people with money. And because I wasn't a writer,
Yeah.
or didn't write much, that, I didn't see that money. So I know it's several things that I'm trying to say at once. So let me slow down just a little bit and kind of focus on one aspect at a time. So the key is, as an artist, many people want to go out there and they think that it's just all glamorous and you're making all this money.
Yeah.
Your best bet as an artist is to educate yourself first on the money. Make sure that you do have financial advisement. Make sure your taxes are being paid. Hallelujah, as Medea says it. Please make sure that happens. Stay on top of your game. That's the best advice that I can give anybody, instead of just being so gullible and naive and being so anxious and wanting to sign. When somebody tells you to get an attorney to look at that contract, please do that, and get someone that that has a reputable that's reputable, someone that you feel comfortable with, and learn as much as you can about the business. I mean, know where your money is going. That budget that you're getting at that label, know where it's going. Have a manager that works for you, not you working for them or working together. Have a manager that listens to the things that you say that you want to do versus them trying to control everything for themselves. I ran through several managers, and I'm not even going to begin to put out there who I'm talking to, because they know who they are. I've had several managers that just try to just take control. Learning what a manager is supposed to do is also your money, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
So again, going back to one of the key things is on this aspect of basically just knowing the business as much as you can. Get in there and learn. If you got to read, if you got to know what's going on behind the scenes, go ahead and do that, because that's your business. You're a commodity. You're the business. And if you let any and everybody else take control, that's what they're just going to do. However, there are people that believe, they have family members that can come in, that can help them out, and that they feel comfortable with, feeling like, okay, well, I can trust them because that's my family. You still, at the end of the day, should learn as much as you can about the business, because there's some family members you can't trust either.
Yeah.
So the best advice that I can give to stay on top of your money, to stay on top of your game, is know where your money's going, and make sure that you're leading that pack. Don't let everybody lead you. You can have some of that guidance, you can have some advice, you can have some words of encouragement, but you better ride that ship. You better steer that boat, because people will try to take advantage and run your life, but don't nobody know you better than you know yourself. So run your business. That's the best advice I can give. And I think if I was a lot more stern and less naive, that I would have been a lot further than where I was, and then even where I am now. But don't get me wrong. I'm so thankful to God that I'm standing today, even though it was the one song or two songs in some areas, and it's been 20 something plus years. When I tell you that God has brought me to a place of such understanding and acceptance, he truly has. And I have a story, and I know that I'm, that my story will help someone else. It actually has helped some, I'm quite sure. So when you ask, why I said, you ready for this story? So when it comes to the money, I'm not sure if I answered it exactly how you want it, but I answered what was on my heart.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. But I guess it's the hard thing is that when you're still young, your early 20s, and this opportunity, how hard is it to even think long term?
You better believe it. Especially, and my upbringing was on the poor side. So it's like somebody's giving you a $25,000 advance.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, So it's like, so those things as well happen. But like I said, the many people, they get excited, the gullibleness, the naive, and, you're not even thinking about vultures. You're thinking everybody's in your ear saying, if it's not how good you look, it's how good you sound.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what I mean? So you and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be famous. And like I said, it was a dream for me, but I really didn't see myself ever doing it. I just knew that I loved music. I love to sing, and I'm just like, Lord, I thank you. This is happening. So I'm trying to focus on so many other things and just put my full trust in everyone. And I should have just been more, like I said, up on my game, and I wasn't.
Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, to press the notification bell so that you can be notified when we do have a new interview. Loads to come, but thanks a lot for watching.